Hello, people of YouTube. My name is Steve Gray, and thank you for watching. Today, we're going to be talking about the difference between a Gibson Les Paul Studio, which is around my neck, Gibson Les Paul Standard in the left hand, Gibson Les Paul Custom in the right hand. So, for starters, we have the Gibson Les Paul Studio. This is the basic base model. Price range, I think they're around $1,600 right now. So, if you want to get a Gibson Les Paul, that's pretty much what you have to pay in order to get that. Construction, very similar to the standard in custom with some subtle differences. So you're going to get a mahogany body, which is this part, a maple top, mahogany neck. Typically you have a rosewood fretboard. Depending on the year, this one does have an ebony board. Some of the newer ones, the newer moderns also have an ebony board as well. You don't typically get any binding. Sometimes you do get binding on the neck. You never really get binding on the body unless you're going back to like the first couple of years of the studio back in 1983. And then in terms of the top, you don't get a flame top. So if you saw the custom at the beginning of the video, that has a flame top, which that's an oddball custom as well, but we'll get into that when we talk about that one. Typically it's a plain maple top, sometimes two pieces, sometimes three, sometimes one, kind of your luck of the draw. They do have special runs with flame maple figuring as well. In terms of the pickups, you're going to have a three-way selector switch. Sometimes you get push-pull, sometimes you don't. That depends on the year. 9 out of 10, your pickups are going to be the 490R 498T set. They're pretty much have been in the Les Paul Studio for well over, I think, 30 years at this point in time, and they are still using them on the Les Paul Modern Studio. They did just finally switch to some Burstbucker Pros on the regular Studio, but they are still using this pickup set, which they have been using forever. If you're looking for a playing demo, you're not going to get that here, sorry. If you want to see me play any of these guitars, you're more than welcome to check out the other videos on my channel. This is more about the actual physical specs of all of these things, you know, the neck specs, pickups, body thickness, tuners, all of that. So in terms of the thickness of the body, the Studios are a little bit thinner. I don't know why. They are just under 2 inches, whereas the standards and the customs are going to be just a hair over 2 inches, typically with the thickness of the body. I don't know if it's because they're using a thicker maple cap. That could definitely be a possibility, being that typically these guys have a very, very thin maple cap. I don't know if you can see the line there, but it is not very thick. I'll be honest with you. So that's my best guess, is that they're using a lesser quality maple, being this is a cheaper guitar, putting that on the top and then doing a little bit of a dish carve. You still got your 2-pneumatic bridge. They still give you a pick guard. In terms of tuners, those vary from year to year. So these are the Gibson Deluxe Kluson tuners. You can find these. You can find regular Grovers. You can find mini Grovers. Pretty much any type of configuration depending on the model. It's kind of all over the place. But if you want a Les Paul that sounds like a Les Paul that has Gibson on the headstock, keep in mind you are going to get silkscreen for both the Les Paul logo and the Gibson as well. So no mother of pearl on this. None of the inlays are mother of pearl. Your trapezoids are all mother of toilet seat, as Fender likes to say. Some sort of acrylic material. There are no actual fancy specs on this thing. It is meant to put on, play it, be a Les Paul, sound like a Les Paul, have the general shape of a Les Paul, but not have all the thrills of the binding, typically the flame maple, different fretboard woods, different pickups, different tuners, full body thickness, things along those lines. That's pretty much what you're getting at with the Les Paul Studio. They're still fantastic guitars. They're typically lighter than the standard and the custom as well, so that may be a factor you want too. The newer ones are ultra modern weight relieved, meaning they are even lighter. Typically most of them are under 8 pounds, where with the Les Paul, depending on the year, you can get into the 12 to 13 pound range. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the standard. The next in line is the Gibson Les Paul Standards. Yes, there are tributes and classics, things along those lines as well, but for this video, we're talking about the standard specifically. So when you move up to the standard, you're still getting a rosewood fretboard. You're still getting the same trapezoid inlays, no mother of pearl. You are getting the neck binding, and you're also getting the fret nibs as well. In terms of neck profile, both very similar. Sometimes you can get a slim taper on the Studios. Typically you get a 50s or 60s profile On the studios, the standard, the customs, pretty much everything is you're getting a 50s profile or 60s profile, so a little bit thicker, a little bit thinner, depending on what you like. Tuners are most likely going to be Grovers. It is possible to get the deluxe tuners, depending on the year, depending on the style. Typically, they are going to be Grovers. If you move on to the Gibson logo, we are now in actual mother of pearl. The only mother of pearl on the standard is the Gibson logo. You still got the silk screen for the Les Paul logo there as well. Now, moving on to the body, you still have a mahogany neck, mahogany body, maple top. So same construction there, nothing different going on there. But the body thickness is going to be a little bit thicker, as I mentioned. So this is thicker than a Les Paul Studio. You also have a single ply cream binding. Sometimes it's black, but a single ply binding just on the top. There is no binding on the back of this guitar. Then in terms of the top, always going to be 2-piece, 9 out of 10. If you go into the 70s, so you get some 3 pieces, but 9 out of 10 with the newer ones, you're getting a 2-piece top. It can be a plain top, it can be flame maple. This is somewhere in between. If I move it, hoping the camera actually picks it up, but typically it's going to be some sort of flame maple, lower grade, not typically higher grade. Sometimes you can get the higher grade if you pay extra. You do get the fret nibs as well. So there are certain iterations of the standard where they don't do the fret nibs. Basically, if you don't know what that means, is the binding goes up to the edge of the fret. So when you're going up and down the neck, feels nice and smooth. You're not getting caught on a fret that has been widened or shrunk. Sometimes, depending on the year, you can actually get, it's called fret shrinkage or fretboard shrinkage. And what that means is that there will be a gap between the binding and the fretboard. So if you are getting an older one, that may be something to look out for as well. In terms of electronics, so you got your 3-way switch like you always do. 2 volumes, 2 tones, sometimes push-pull depending on the year and the model. Typically, these are some sort of form of burst bucker. This particular one is an older one, so it does have the 490 R498T set in it, being in early 2000s. But this day and age, 9 out of 10, you're going to get some sort of form of burst bucker pickup in there as well. And then, you got the white pick guard too here. Same thing, 2 pneumatic bridge as well. But in terms of moving up the line, it's aesthetics. So it's aesthetics, a little bit of body thickness. That's ultimately what you're paying extra for. I believe these are about $2,800 right now. So you're talking to $1,200 difference for a little bit thicker body, mother of pearl, neck and body binding, possibly a flame maple top, a little bit different pickups as well. So it's ultimately up to you if you want to spend the extra $1,200 on a brand new standard. Used, you can definitely get them cheaper. Usually you can get them on like around 2,000-ish used, depending on the year. But it's going to be ultimately up to the consumer if they can justify spending the extra $1,200 to get all the fancy appointments. And this is the category where people call them quote-unquote real Les Pauls. They're all real Les Pauls if it's made by Gibson, as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of people don't like the studios because there's no binding on them whatsoever. So let's go ahead and put this one down, and then we will talk about the final one, the Gibson Les Paul Custom. Now, moving on to the most expensive of the range is the Gibson Les Paul Custom. Now, this one is a little bit weird. So typically, the Les Paul Custom does not have a maple top. This one is a Les Paul Custom Premium Plus, I think is the proper name for it. So it does have a flame maple top. But usually, when you get a Les Paul Custom, you are getting a solid white one or a solid black one, and you are losing the maple top. Now you're thinking, oh, well, flame maple, why would they be, why are we not using that on the custom? And the reason is black finishes and white finishes are actually harder to create than a burst finish because they show finish flaws significantly worse than any other type of finish. So it takes a lot more time on the buffing wheel and in the paint department to make sure that it's coming out nice and shiny without a whole bunch of imperfections in it. So we'll start up at the headstock. As you can see, we have, I believe, 5-ply binding on the headstock itself. We have gold Grover tuners, typically gold, 9 out of 10, you're going to get some sort of gold hardware on the customs. You can also get gold hardware and pickups on the studios and the standards as well, depending on the year, but customs I typically associate with gold. You don't typically see the Kluson Deluxes on these. Usually there's like a waffle back, it's called, depending on the year you're getting, but 9 out of 10, if you're getting a newer one, it's going to be a gold Grover tuner, something like that. So you get mother of pearl logo, and then you get the diamond as well, the split diamond here on the headstock, also mother of pearl. Moving on to the neck, you typically have an ebony fretboard. Some years there was richolite. A lot of people don't like that, so if you're buying a used one, just keep that in mind. If you look at the fretboard itself, we also have the binding with the fret nibs, of course, and now we're getting into real mother of pearl. So no more mother of toilet seat, actual mother of pearl on both the headstock and the inlays. Ebony fretboard here as well, like that particular studio. As I said, depending on the year with the studio, you can get ebony, but typically rosewood. Customs will pretty much only have ebony and occasionally richolite, depending on the year. Sometimes you can find one with a rosewood fretboard, but that's few and far between. Now, moving on to the body. Pickups, yet again, these are going to be the same in pretty much every single custom. Some of the newer ones have a little bit different configuration, but 9 out of 10, you are going to find the 490R, 498T pickup configuration, gold. You're going to have your gold tune-o-matic as well. You got no pick guard on this one. Customs, I think they ship with a pick guard, but they're not installed. Just, some people like the look, some people don't. Still got a 3-way selector switch, so nothing different there. 4 knobs, yet again. Some years you can get the push pull knobs. Other years you can't. Depends on what you got. On the top, we have a 7-ply binding. So not just one layer, multiple layers. It goes white, black, white, black, white, black, and repeats that till it hits the wood. And then going on to the back of the guitar, you also have a 5-ply binding. So this is also where you're getting expensive as well. Moving on to the neck and body, typically a 1-piece mahogany body and 1-piece or 2-piece mahogany top. Yet again, depending on the years, you could have more pieces of wood. It's always going to be a 1-piece neck. And you got all the fancy gold everywhere, gold pickups, gold tune-o-matic tailpiece, gold tuners, gold switch tip plate here going on right there as well. And I'm trying to remember the price of these brand new. I know it's over $3,000. I want to say it is in the $3,500 to $3,800 range. You are more than welcome to correct me if I am wrong in the comments. Now, all of these guitars that I've showed you are bone stock, but every single one of these, someone changed out the strap locks on them, or strap buttons. They started with strap buttons, they got strap locks. That's a common thing. A lot of people like strap locks, so that's the first thing that goes. And sometimes the pickups. Now, in terms of pickups in these guitars, if you want to modify them and change them, do not do that on the standard. Do not do that on the custom, because people that buy those instruments want them to be 100% original. They're spending a lot of money on them. They do not want something that got swapped out. And even if you put the originals back in it, sometimes that can hurt the value. Same with changing the tuners, changing the nut. If you have to do a refret and you're missing the fret nibs, that can hurt the value as well. But ultimately, you want to leave them alone, essentially. If you do change anything, what I would recommend is, because both the standard and the custom come with a nice hard shell case, the studio does not in most cases, just whatever parts you change, put them in the case, or put them in a drawer somewhere where you can get them, and then when you go to sell that guitar, put it back to original, and make sure whatever modifications you're making do not damage the guitar. So you don't want to put extra tuner holes up top, anything along those lines. That is a no-no. And then you don't want to drill holes, route the guitar out. If it comes with a Floyd Rose, that's fine. I mean, ultimately, it is your money, it is your instrument, do with it what you want. But if you are thinking about resale value in the future, if you buy this expensive instrument, you don't like it a few years down the road, you're not using it, or you're afraid to play it because of how expensive it is, then you want to keep it as original as possible. Now, going back to the studio, do whatever you want with a studio, because there's a million studios out there. It's probably like the #1 produced Gibson guitar, that would be my guess, of the past 30 years, and people modify them all the time. So it is not unheard of to find a studio with different tuners, different pickups, different controls, different whatever. definitely a possibility. Now, this custom, I believe, does not have the original nut, and I don't think that studio has the original nut either. That can happen sometimes. Sometimes you have to take out the nut and replace it. Some people say it devalues the guitar a little bit. Most people don't care because that is, it's a part that constantly has movement. Every time you tune, the string moves to the nut, moves to the bridge, so there's got to be movement there. If you have the original, throw it in the case, keep it in there in case you got any snobs that want that in the future for whatever reason. Otherwise, you replace it, no big deal. Same with the bridge. Keep the original bridge in the case if it collapses or something, because Gibson bridges can collapse over a long period of time where you have to replace them, unfortunately. And then just throw it in the case, and when you sell it, they have the option to put it back on the guitar if they so choose. Same with tuners and pickups, things along those lines. If you don't want to mess with anything, just when you sell the guitar, sell all the parts with it, and your buyer will be very happy. Now, ultimately, what it comes down to is how much are you willing to pay for fanciness? And that's literally what it comes down to. Do you really need the 7-ply binding? Do you really need all the gold? Do you really need the neck binding, the real mother of pearl everywhere? Do you need all that, or you just want the sound? Because if you just want the sound, get the studio. I would say get a used studio, because you can get most used studios for under $1,000. It is not that unheard of. I don't think I paid $1,000 for that studio. Now, if you want something a little bit fancier, you want the standard model, buy a standard. There you go. If you have to have the binding, you have to have all the fancy appointments, you want the burst finish, everything along those lines, then by all means get a standard. And then if you want the cream of the crop, the fancy of the fancy, you got rich doctor lawyer money, then get a custom, hang it on your wall, and don't play it. Because I can guarantee you, a lot of people that have a Les Paul custom, it is just a showpiece. They're not playing it. This one doesn't get played that often, I'll be honest with you. This one is a case queen. The standard gets played significantly more, and so does the studio, because they're both a little bit beat up. They're already in player's condition. Now, if you buy a studio that's or a custom that's already in player's condition, then who cares? If you put another mark on it, it's already got 50 on it. Doesn't make a difference. But if you have one that's brand new or in mint condition and you don't want to mess it up, 9 out of 10 it's going to end up being a case queen, like this thing is. This one's, I would say, 8 out of 10. There's a couple of little dings here and there, a little bit of stand rash where it was hanging on a stand for who knows how long. But that's what you got to do. It's about how much money are you willing to spend to get all of the fanciness. It's time too. It takes extra time to put more layers of binding on it, to do actual mother of pearl inlays, to do more inlay on the top as well. Do the binding on the back of the guitar too. So it's a time frame. You're paying for labor and you're paying for more fancy things. Now, is it worth the $2,000 difference between a studio and a custom for all of that? I don't personally think it's worth a $2,000 difference, but that is going to be ultimately up to the buyer. As I said, if you got some money lying around, you just want the sound, you don't care about anything else, buy a studio. If you want something a little fancier, go for the standard. You can also do like a tribute or a classic. That's another option as well. But then if you got the money and you're just like, oh, I just got a $5,000 scratcher, yeah, get a custom, because why not? If you got that money lying around, you might as well get the fanciest of the fancy. And yes, there's even fancier. So it goes higher when you get into the custom reissues and the Murphy shop and all of that. But in terms of the standard line, which this was made in the standard USA line. This was not a custom in the custom shop. This is a 90s custom. I think it was maybe mid to late 90s, they actually moved the customs to the actual custom shop. So that is something to keep in mind too, depending on the year. You may have a custom that was not made in the actual custom shop. But there it is. There you have it. There's the differences between the three. Just kind of wanted to show off the three of them, the three differences, because at some point I'm going to be selling that standard. The custom I'm keeping, and probably keeping the studio too. But I don't need 3 guitars with the same set of pickups. I did not realize when purchasing the standard that it had the same pickups as the other two. That is my own fault for not looking into that. I think actually maybe I had this one, the newest. I don't remember which one I got the newest. But I think the most I actually paid was for the standard. I don't remember the exact amount, nor do I remember the exact amount of the custom, but I know I paid significantly less than the custom was worth, because the guy was just trying to get rid of it. He needed some money to fix his car. Worked out for me. in the long run there. And I also helped him out. I told him the value of it too. You know, I try to educate people. That particular person ended up getting a large guitar collection out of nowhere. He didn't know what to do with it, and he was like, hey, these things are worth money. So I educated him, and I actually got him significantly more money on another guitar that he sold along with this one. I wish I had the money at the time. I would have bought both of the guitars. He had a R7, which is a 1957 replica. Should have bought that thing too, but did not have the cash on me at the time, which sucked. So we got the Les Paul Custom. Oh no, just the Les Paul Custom. Am I right? But thank you for watching. That's where we'll end it. Hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell, like, share, comment, all that fun stuff. And until next time, have a good one.